Hello, good evening and welcome aboard to Business Today. Hope you're doing okay. I'm Jorum Sonko with Winnie and Akauchi on the sign language. Here to give you more from our daily report of business reports making headlines across the country. All right, now we start off with the Insurance Regulatory Authority quarterly performance. As the insurance sector, quarterly performance has seen the demand for insurance, which is not yet a priority for the majority of Ugandans, highly influenced by macroeconomic factors. As inflation stays in double digits, impacting purchasing power and limiting savings, the Insurance Regulatory Authority enhances off-heating 15% growth for the quarter, with 18%, and the end of year growth is currently being revised from 120.14 to from 120 to 142. Nahaba Rona with the report.
The insurance industry has remained on a positive growth trajectory as it has registered 1.8 trillion shillings as compared to the 912 billion shillings that were registered in the same quarter period last year. Non-life business generated 632.3 billion shillings of the total gross written premium in quarter 3 of 2022, growing from the 528.8 billion shillings in quarter 3 of 2021. This represents a 19.58% growth. Life insurance business, on the other hand, generated 351.3 billion shillings, growing from 291.6 billion shillings in quarter 3 of 2021. This represents a 20.46% growth. Health membership organizations generated 33.4 billion shillings, down from 35.9 billion shillings in the corresponding period in 2021. This represents a 7.97% decline. However, we have seen a significant decline of 7.33% for the micro-insurance businesses as inflation continues to make it hard for the people at the lowest economic pyramid to save. This was mentioned in relation to the reasons behind one of the most significant sectors recording a massive decline and whether or not it will be felt.
Because the highest we've gone is still less than 1 billion. So if you are talking of a sector which is 1 trillion plus, then the relative impact of that decline may not be felt since it is still small. But from a regulator's point of view, it is a sector which we consider very important because of its potential to serve. The Chief Executive Director says they intend to release a more comprehensive report at the end of the year that will tackle other areas, including the marine cargo insurance.
There were some issues which we had to make sure that we liaise with other stakeholders and we resolve. I am happy to say that where we are back to normal where we want to move.
A good insurance venture intends to attract more international players, especially those in the oil and gas sector.
You definitely know that as the timelines for oil and gas draws closer, the big players know that it is not going to be business as usual in Uganda. So they do not want to be caught when they are outside the market. So they find all the reasons to come as soon as possible to participate in the insurance industry in Uganda.
It is imperative to note that 476.52 billion shillings was paid out in gross claims during the period, accounting for 44.1% of industry's total premium. This is as compared to 363.15 billion shillings, which was paid in quarter 3 of 2021. Rona Nahabwe, Smart 24 TV, Business Today.
All right, now let's look at insurance awareness. Due to anticipated financial losses brought on by building collapsing, as well as fire breakouts and other events, many firms have had to close. In order to educate and teach the general people about the significance of insurance in business, the Insurance Training College has developed a strategy that will begin in schools. This is Anamaru with more.
Insurance is a tool for risk management. You purchase protection against unfair financial losses when you purchase insurance. The Insurance Training College has arrived to aid those in the business sector by educating the locals about insurance. But it should start in schools so that kids grow up with that understanding.
Of course, when you look at the reason as to why we are getting into schools, there are different reasons. One, we are a training institution, and we believe by having a partnership with training institutions, schools, we shall get into, we do the same kind of work. But we've also seen a few happenings in schools that we think when we get into schools, we can help them overcome them. So that is what we are looking at. You've seen the fires, you've seen accidents in the schools, and they also don't know what is happening. So we think this partnership will go a long way in helping schools overcome some of these challenges.
Senior 6 vacists program. We have also, as a college, designed a Senior 6 program for the vacists, and it's going to be 1.5 months, and it is going to be very engaging. But in that program, one of the things we are going to do is we are going to bring people from the insurance sector who have made it and can act as mentors to these young students, if I may call it that way. And they are going to talk to them and interest them and tell them the good things about taking insurance as a career.
Governments must play a big role in reducing the protection gap and in developing the strategic risk-sharing system that enhances the financial resilience and stability of communities. According to Evelyn Nkalu-Muwemba, the Executive Director, Sonko, the government has tried but not yet executed the expectations of the key players.
They're going to include insurance in the curriculum of the primary and secondary. That will go a long way. It will also remove the mindset of people. If I ask what people think of insurance, you won't understand. It's only when someone meets with an accident, they say, they told me insurance pays. Can I now pay? And they pay for this car. Then you have to explain to them how insurance worked. You need to have paid before this accident. That is why we have this awareness.
In order to close the protection gap, the governments are in a good position to encourage the launch of insurance products. Partnerships between public and private sectors are helpful to transfer sovereign risks, expanding social security programs, and guaranteeing that the coverage is available to vast population segments. Desire Nambiru, Smart 24 TV, Business Today.
All right, now let's look at the annual agricultural survey report for 2022. As according to the Uganda Bureau of Statistics, agricultural statistics overall, 76% of agriculture household heads are engaged in agriculture as their main economic activity. However, in 2020, only 14% received these extension services. Now, other findings show that Uganda's post-harvest losses range from 300 to 400,000. Of course, that is roughly 30% to 40% for grains and 30% to 80% for the fresh fruits. Now, on the other hand, Honorable Bwino Chaplaga, the Minister of State for Agriculture, says that this is detrimental to our economy and urgent solutions need to be found.
The agricultural sector continues to be the most important, for it employs approximately 72% of the population and currently contributes about 32% of the country's GDP. However, productivity is still limited by post-harvest losses and lack of enough extension services, among others. According to the data from the annual agricultural survey report that was disseminated by Uganda Bureau of Statistics, 14% of the agriculturists received extension services, 1.9% paid for them, and 44% got these services from the local government. Uganda's post-harvest losses range from 30 to 40 for grains and other staples, and 30 to 80% for fresh fruits and vegetables. According to Honorable Bwino Chaplaga, the State Minister for Agriculture, this is catastrophic for the economy and needs immediate attention.
The government increased the staffing levels of extension workers from the previous, which was about one extension worker serving 5,000 farmers, to the current level of one extension worker serving 1,800 farmers. But that doesn't mean that we have done everything. That's why I said it's work in progress. we are going to do more.
Uganda can gain substantially from her agricultural products if the country can adopt and implement value addition techniques and strategies. However, the agricultural statistics from WOBOS 2020 indicates that some of the products are sold and processed without value addition.
The use of the cassava mainly used for own consumption. 67% of the cassava produced was used for own consumption when you looked at the second season total production. 16% was sold and processed.
The data further indicates that the rice production increased by 65% in 2020 and 65% was sold and processed. 78% of the soybean production was as well sold and processed, and maize at 47.5%. The minister says that the findings concerning value addition are not abnormal.
The statistics are showing the level of processing at the farm level. Yes, it is true that there is less processing at the farm level, but it's not abnormal. It's not 100% abnormal, because most of the products are processed somewhere centrally. So what happens is that the many farmers have to bulk their products at a certain point. And it's the bulked products that are taken to the processing, to the final processing. So the findings are not very abnormal.
The agricultural survey indicates that 76% of the agricultural household heads are engaged in agriculture as their main economic activity. Teso sub-region had the highest of 92%, West Nile 90%, and South Buganda with 57%. Bedson Mumbere, Smart 24 TV, Business Today.
And now let's look at the changing land systems in Uganda. Globally, land is still the fundamental factor in production, making it valuable and in high demand. So Uganda's government, non-government organizations and private organizations are still working to address the various issues with the land system. Mary Goreti Nachiganda reports.
The goal of the Uganda National Land Policy is to promote the most effective, equitable and efficient use and management of Ugandan land for eradicating poverty, generating wealth and fostering the general socio-economic development. However, many Ugandans continue to have difficulties which restricts their ability to utilize this property profitably.
There are too many unregistered landowners who are living in fear of eviction. Again, there are too many landowners who are suffering from the vice of corruption and land grabbing. It's also true that there are too many women, widows, youth, children, PWs who have been denied access to land.
Uganda's population of 48,432,863 people and a 3.32% population growth rate by 2022 is putting pressure on the elasticity of land. This results in the never-ending land disputes that can only be settled when people accept registering their land. The CEO of Uganda Land Board further exhorts the populace to protect their land and develop initiatives that would enhance their lives and strengthen their community.
We all take our hands into putting in practice what the law says and giving chance all security agencies that are involved into land investigations to do that will reduce on the conflict, but key also is the aspect of people getting proper documentation on their land individually. But as the kingdom, we've seen we have key development projects like you can see Mirembe Villas in Chigo, you can see the low-cost housing in Sentema, but you also see establishments like Moganzirwaza building, you see establishments done by individuals on Kabaka's land. We encourage all those owning land not to sell it but to put it into use.
Based on the conclusions of the Commissions of Investigation into Land Matters, chaired by Justice Catherine Bamugemerere, who was also recognized as the leading judiciary fighting for women's rights in Uganda, thorough cabinet white paper that will enable government to address the major challenges as respects to land management in Uganda
would be made public.
Honorable Persis Namuganza, the Minister of State for Housing, has openly said they are in the process of formulating a white paper. Now, that is one of the few reports in this country which has gone beyond being a report to becoming a white paper. So we take her word seriously.
Other African nations accuse Uganda of falling behind due to the distinctive land acquisition method, which makes it difficult for economic development to proceed. This many people sabotage development initiatives by refusing to give up their land or demanding lump sum compensation. The idea that land belongs to the government is currently under consideration, but won't this entail taking people's land through force?
If, for example, the idea of land belonging to government passes, of course the government will come up with operational measures on how land can be acquired if people are settled on it. Because currently, it's only Uganda which is unique in the region. All this, Kenya has been hustling with it, now they passed it. Kenya now land belongs to government, Tanzania land belongs to government, even South Sudan where we helped them with our constitution, land belongs to government. So in the region, we are the only unique country. And you know, because of the regional survey and mapping and management of resources, a conference which is taking place in Munyonyo, the permanent secretaries of about 20 countries reported yesterday. Tomorrow, 20 ministers from the region are reporting. They are accusing Uganda for lagging behind with a very unique land system that does not facilitate development easily in terms of land acquisition, whether it comes to investors or even people within, where you have to go and compensate about 1 to 3 people for you to acquire the same piece of land.
Therefore, this land report, once implemented, shall dismantle the barbaric systems, cure both current and historic problems that have existed since the colonial era, and settle the issues of Crown and Milo land. Mary Goret Nachiganda, Smart 24 TV, Business Today.
All right, now let's look at product quality monitoring, as the Kenya Bureau of Standards has urged importers to be compliant on acquiring the standard mark during cargo clearance. According to the officer in charge of the Kenya Bureau of Standards in Nairobi at the Inland Container Depot, acquiring the mark takes only 1 hour, which indicates how efficient these systems are. Naaman Mutumba reports.
For international trade, shipping has long been the primary route of transportation. Uganda substantially relies on maritime activities, which considerably boosts Uganda's imports and exports on the global market and promotes trade. However, there are numerous issues with commodities transportation that drive up transit costs. Uganda's imports and exports are unquestionably less competitive on the global market as a result of these issues. Before commodities depart Mombasa Port, traders must take into consideration efficiency and quality monitoring, according to the Kenya Bureau of Standards.
Modes of clearance, let me call them modes of clearance. So we have given people options. You can have product registration, which is done locally, where you submit you give your products to KEBS, they check on the quality, then they give you a license to work with for 1 year, which is product registration. You can also do diamond quality, mark of quality, which runs for 3 years. Or you can also apply for it. It's an optional thing, it's a voluntary thing. Or you can choose to keep your products under diamond mark, you pay a fee. We inspect your product, we inspect your products, we inspect your production process, we inspect everything about it, then we certify you for 3 years. Then during the 3 years, we'll be monitoring your product once every 6 months. We can randomly sample and see whether you are still sticking to the quality that we want.
Traders are urged to comply with the authorities to acquire the standard mark for a product to be on market or even exported.
So if you are complying with the requirements, you'll be given the S mark. And if you don't comply, we suspend the S mark, we withdraw the exemption.
By having Uganda Revenue Authority present at several inland container depots, traders' experience with the efficiency of goods and clearance has improved. Since the entire process just takes an hour if the dealers in Uganda follow the rules, they are able to spend less money.
I think has helped a lot the traders because there are many clearance processes or documents that used to be there prior to this arrangement. Clients will make multiple declarations before the cargo reaches their premises. But our being here has lessened those declarations because the client makes one declaration only, and it is that declaration which takes the cargo up to Uganda. So it has reduced the time taken, the turnaround time, also the cost on the side of the clients.
So the clearance ensures that you don't have congestion. So you do like 80% of the consignments which come here, they can even be cleared when they're at Mombasa. So the only products that we normally target here are the ones which are not inspected at all. Those we call destination inspection. We sample them and submit them to the lab for checking quality. But to ensure there is no delay, we normally release them, give them a conditional release. You cannot sell them. You can only sell them once we clear you. So that ensures that still the efficiency of clearance is quite high. So actually in Cape, you don't have delays when it comes to clearance, as long as you comply.
After the Minister for Commerce and Industry published legal notes number 227 of June 14, 1995, quality inspection of imports began in Kenya in July 1995. The government has since issued legal notes to make sure that all imports into Kenya comply with Kenya standards or any other standards authorized by Kenya Bureau of Standards. The inspection body or bodies designated to inspect the items must confirm that all goods subject to this order comply with Kenya standards, all approved specifications in the country of origin. Naomi Mtumba, Smart 24 TV, Business Today.
All right, now away from that, we get more from the transformative change and development. As COP27 comes to an end, the participating nations made resolutions on the topics discussed during the conference. It closed with a breakthrough agreement to eliminate carbon emissions, provide loss and damage funding for vulnerable countries which were hit hard by climate disasters, which involves reduction on carbon emissions. However, the COP members fear that whatever was discussed would just end at the summit, yet Africa needs to be safe from the dangers of climate change. Martha Nimsima with more.
For a just and the transformational development of African nations, emissions reduction is essential. As we look forward to having a good climate, we should regard nature first because the earth is still in a crisis. Countries should work hard and motivate one another in this struggle to eliminate carbon emissions and get climate finance.
We reduce emissions now, and this is an issue this COP did not address. A fund for loss and damage is essential, but it's not an answer if the climate crisis washes a small island state off the map or turns an entire African country to desert. The world still needs a giant leap on climate ambition. The red line we must not cross is the line that takes our planet over the 1.5 degree temperature limit. To have any hope of keeping to 1.5, we need to massively invest in renewables and end our addiction to fossil fuels. We must avoid an energy scramble in which developing countries finish last, as they did in the race for COVID-19 vaccines. Doubling down on fossil fuels is double trouble. The Just Energy Transition partnerships are important pathways to accelerate the phasing out of coal and scaling up renewables. But we need much more. That is why I am pushing so hard for a Climate Solidarity Pact. A pact in which all countries make an extra effort to reduce emissions this decade in line with 1.5 degree goal.
As Uganda anticipates a prosperous mineral revolution, which demands preparing to protect the environment by removing carbon and switching to clean, renewable energy resources.
We've not started producing our petroleum, because in the production of petroleum is where we see huge emission. But even if we started production of our petroleum in 2025, we already have laws in place that prevent venting of gas, that prevent flaring of gas. Through flaring is when you see carbon, a lot of carbon being emitted. So we are going to avoid that. And we are working with an American company to come up with to do research, come up with a technology that will capture carbon. Even the little carbon that will escape, we want to capture it. So we've been talking about this, and that it is not just that drop fossil fuel. No, stop emission should be the word.
To help developing nations respond to climate change, loss and damage, governments should make the revolutionary decision to create new financial arrangements and a dedicated fund. They also create a transitory group to offer suggestions on how to put both of the new funding structures into practice. Martha Nimsima, Smart 24 TV, Business Today.
We're now heading into a commercial break. We do return with the coffee cut here and Business Today.
Smart 24, driving business.
Pozi wanugameka. Bongedde mu bichano post.
Chikole flawless, hakuna hassle, no stress. Whether night or day, tuli okay. Wanga tuli ku FlexiPay.
Don't hustle to pay the bills. Send or receive money. Chikole for less. Ne FlexiPay. Hold it.
Chikole for less with FlexiPay. Dial *291# to transact or download the FlexiPay app to get started. Stanbic Bank. It can be. Stanbic Bank is regulated by the Bank of Uganda, and customer deposits are protected by the Deposit Protection Fund of Uganda, up to 10 million shillings.
Say goodbye to paperwork and travel costs. Now every MTN customer can register to invest in securities anytime and anywhere with Zabu in a few simple steps. Step 1. Dial *292#. Step 2. Select option 1. Register with Zabu. Step 3. Enter your full names. Step 4. Enter your national identification number. Step 5. Enter your national identification card number. In 24 hours, you will receive an SMS confirming your registration. Congratulations, you are now ready to invest.
Sky. Futinbuto, the taste of Uganda in a new international park.
Smart 24, driving business.
Good evening again, and thank you for sticking with us here on the Business Today. Speaking of which, it's time for us to get into the coffee cut this particular hour of our discussion. And in our coffee cup tonight, we look at the issue to do with the presidential directives regarding the management of the Kampala city markets. Remember, President Museveni did give a directive in regards to the management of 16 Kampala markets, which were taken over by the Kampala City Council Authority. Now, the instruction is to make sure that the sellers accept responsibility for operating in this area on the basis of one stall per vendor and paying the Kampala City Council Authority's directive a low rent. And the concept is that these markets should serve as commercial as well as nursery schools where newcomers can operate. And as there are farms that are already developing, however, they can advance to more affluent areas with their kids. More of this in the coffee cup.
It's a pleasure and thank you for joining us. On this critical matter, we'll be discussing markets in Kampala. Of course, just of recent, the President issued the second directive that all markets in Kampala should be handled by Kampala Capital City Authority, which is the regulating body that regulates business in Kampala. And I am privileged to speak to the person in charge of markets in Kampala, and that is none other than Mr. Bukenya Henry. Thank you for joining me, Mr. Bukenya.
Thank you.
So the President has issued many directives. Let's majorly talk about the last directive, which he issued just of recent. What do you make of the directive first and foremost?
Well, I think there have been issues going on in our markets, public markets more especially. And when you look at what the President is talking about, he's talking about exploitation of the typical vendors. And that is his main aim. He's also talking about markets being a nursery for entrepreneurs, and that is his main focus. So what he's saying is, let these markets be operated in by the typical vendors, by the poor vendors. He refers to them as wananchi. So his focus is to ensure that in markets we only have starters, those people who are yearning to start businesses, but not those that have already grown in business. So he's saying let them be nursery beds for the entrepreneurs. So he's saying all those that have been able to grow their capital can now move out of the market and be able to probably operate in arcades. So that is his main focus. But again, he's also saying there are people who have been in charge of managing vendors, and instead of helping them, they are only exploiting them. So he's saying that should stop. But again, he's also saying they are landlords in the markets. So when you look at his focus, I think it is beneficial to the vendors, more especially those who are starters, because initially markets were meant for our local population, not for rich men. Okay.
So how many markets do we have, and how many markets are we talking about as of late?
We are talking about 16 public markets in Kampala.
And what are these?
Of course, we have, there are two new, but let me talk about those that are already existing and operating. We have a market like St. Barikudembe, we have Nakasero, we have Wandegeya, Nakawa, Bugorovi, Chiswa, we have Sitabatwa, we have Kiseka, we have Namuwongo 1, Namuwongo 2, we have Busega, which we are about to commission, and then we have other markets like Chiswa, Chinawataka. I've mentioned them. So these are the markets that the President is talking about. And these are the markets which is saying there should be for local people. The starters, those who wish to start businesses, that they should be able to start in the markets.
Let's now be specific. You're talking about people that have just started. How do you measure that so and so he's just on the starting ground?
Well, this is by the way very easy. Because if a person is applying for a worker space and his or her operating capital is between 50 and 100, that is a starter. But there are also people who are operating in the markets with the capital that is in $1 billion almost. If you went to markets like Nakasero, where some traders operating in hardware, and you think that can be a starter? So the president's focus is on the people. Maybe these younger graduates who would wish to explore their life in business. And the only place to start with is the market. He's looking at these people. Of recent, when we were starting this year, you may remember, when we relocated most of the street vendors. So the president's focus is that let these street vendors who have been relocated from the street be able to operate in the markets. And mainly when you look at the people that were operating on the streets, their capital do not go beyond 500,000, and these are starters. So we are focusing on ensuring that if somebody has been operating on the street with that lower capital, can this person be able to operate in a better and organized environment so that he's able to grow his business or her business, and then eventually can transit to maybe arcades. And you see, when we are looking at that, the other focus is that if this person is starting small, maybe he's a one-man businessman, but we are looking at him transiting into that that entrepreneur that can even be in a position to employ others. And it starts in the market, where you will start small, probably with the time you employ one person, and by the time your capital grows and probably you are ready to relocate from the market to maybe arcade or any other business center, then you are an employer. So if we are to grow our economy, we are looking at nurturing these small business people so that they are able to become real businessmen, and then our country will be able to grow. So that is the focus of His Excellency. And he's saying whoever enters the market at that lower level, if he is able or if she is able to grow his or her capital, then she goes, and then another person is admitted into the market.
So
and the cycle continues.
So what is your right measure for somebody who has grown in a market, maybe as a commercial manager?
We are majorly looking at the capital because it starts with the capital.
So how do you tell the capital?
Definitely when they apply, we have a committee that will appraise their applications, and they are able to tell. But we also have vendors database, more especially those that have been operating on the streets. In fact, when the president gave the directive, the Prime Minister went ahead and also substantiated on that same directive. And her directive was for any available space, specifically in Wandegea, the first priority should be able to go to the people who have been operating on the streets. And then we know these people. You see, it's very, very easy for us to identify a starter from those that are already operating as serious business people. So that will be able to...
The other major issues are people having more than one stall.
Yes.
Is this right? Is this right? Or is this the reality that the people owning more than one?
Thank you so much. Whereas that has been the reality, basing on so many factors, by the way. For instance, when we go to Wandegea, the new Wandegea market facility was a redevelopment.
True.
A redevelopment from the already markets that used to exist in that place. And then when the government was securing funding, this was one of the conditions, that if somebody had more than a facility, maybe 2 or 3, the condition was that this person was supposed to remain at the same level or even better than the level this person was on. So implying that if somebody had more than one facility in the other already markets, this was the same person that was supposed to be given the same number of facilities in the new market. And that's how having more than one facility started. So it was a precondition for securing a loan that was used by government to construct that market. However, the government policy has now changed. The government is saying if we are looking at employing more people, bringing many people into the cash economy, then we must revise some of those conditions that were there before. So today, the policy is, if you are entering the market, you are in the market, you are supposed to have one facility, so that these other people that could not access these low-cost working spaces can also be able to benefit, more especially when it comes to government built-up markets.
Okay.
So that is the reason why one of the directives the president gave was that it should be one vendor, one facility, so that there is a fair distribution of these low-cost working facilities to whoever is willing to work in a market. But as I already mentioned, the priority is going to the people that we are operating on our streets, so that we incorporate them in the markets, and they work in a better working environment.
Does that mean if I had a stall 2-3 years ago,
yes,
that is no longer a case?
If you had a store, let's say if you had a store in a market like a Wandegea, right, and you subletted it to a subtenant, you are not interested in working in the market, a reason why you subletted it. So the directive is saying whoever is operating on that store or in that lockup is actually the right person to work in there, because for you, probably you are working somewhere and these stores which had been subletted by those that initially had the opportunity to run them are going to lose it out.
I could be bedridden. It may not necessarily drive us to what you've said, that I am not interested. I could be bedridden.
But if you are bedridden, then we would expect maybe your employee that you might have employed to work for you, but not subletting, because you see these are government facilities and it is not ownership. And I think that's where some people have gotten it wrong, thinking that if the government has allocated you a space to work in, it now becomes yours. In fact, now the policy is coming out clearly, saying those that are interested in working, come and work at that very low cost, but not the cost that they probably would incur when you are operating in an arcade. So what we are saying is that markets should only admit people are going to work in it, but not landlords. Because the mere fact that you have gotten this working space and then you are subletting it to a person, you are indirectly becoming a landlord.
This is just leadership, the way you head the commercial markets. When there's a landlord, it's just a matter of leadership, that when you have an issue, you run to X and Y for help. It is not an issue of ownership, it is an issue of leadership.
Maybe to clarify, there should be one landlord. Apart from talking, there is leadership, but there is also way of managing our people in the markets by the government. Now, in fact, one of the directives is KCCA should be fully in charge. So what we are saying is, these markets, we can only have people interested in working on that store in a particular market or in that lockup. So what we are saying is, if you were indirectly working or operating as a landlord in a government market, that is ceasing. In fact, that has already ceased. So if you were bedridden, let's assume, what is the proof that you were bedridden? Because now these are matters, administrative matters, that can be handled differently. Probably if you are bedridden, then there should be medical forms and everything that can confirm that claim. And you must have written to the person that was in charge. If there was a market administrator, would expect that you may be communicated. But if that is not there, then these other stories will remain stories. I was bedridden, but there is nothing that can confirm that.
Mr. Kenya, what will give us happiness is when KCCA takes over. But we've heard of instances where people say that even KCCA as an authority, there are people that hold more than a stall. So you are not among the people that are just big. I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about KCCA. I'm sure you've had all these allegations. Anyway, if they're allegations.
And yes, I need to confirm this. There are markets, more especially those that were private in a way. There are people who might have had the opportunity to secure a worker place before they joined the KCCA. These markets are not new markets.
Okay.
These are very old markets we are talking about. If you look at Nakasero market, this was constructed around 1924, but the initial market was 1895.
So we've come actually a long way.
We are coming from very... So you find these markets have nurtured so many people, have nurtured our grandparents. So these are very old markets. Now, you may find a person today is maybe even a minister, but the mother, the father, was at one time working in the market. But now we are saying, whereas we are aware of that, the policy now is changing. There was a time when His Excellency the President gave a directive that vendors were supposed by then to handle the affairs of their markets. And in fact, the President went ahead to advise them to form associations. But of course, now when you look at the directive he
and
gave,
that made your work easier, because you as a commercial manager, you don't just move here and there. So if the vendors are addressing their own issues, it becomes very easy
But
for
then
you.
they misused that. And that's where the president now is coming from.
Because we were maybe
issue.
distant away from them.
You see, if they were handling their own affairs, it means government actually had left everything unto them to manage. But now, instead of using that opportunity to do good governance for their vendors, they instead turned into exploiters. And that's what the president is saying, no. For the first time, let us return these markets to the government fully. Because you say, I will also tell you this, Mr. Makubuya, there has never been any day or time that government was fully in charge of managing and administering these markets. That has never been there. I will tell you, during late His Worship Sebana Kizito, markets were put, by then it was KCC, markets were being tendered out. So it was the tenderers managing the affairs of the markets. Now from tendering, markets were given now to people like Hassan Basajja Baraba and his companies, so that he was the one in charge and the reasons were given to him. So that during all that time, there was nothing like a direct management by government. And then when that was also dealt with, when the president issued the directive that, okay, now I've had enough of that, now vendors manage your own affairs, it also became a little bit tricky, because now people, or some of the section of the leaders in the markets, were looking at enriching themselves or at the expense of their fellow vendors they are supposed to help. And in fact, the president is also very categorical. He's saying some of them had even plotted to hijack these markets fully. So you find an association which was supposed maybe to have all the vendors operating in a particular market being under that association. That was not possible.
I've not had you engage the different stakeholders that help you run Kampala. I've not had you engage Kasita, I've not had you engage Kafo, I've not had you engage many of these associations who play a very key and strategic role in managing commercial areas. Yes.
But you see what has been happening, Mr. Makubuya. When the vendors had the opportunity to manage the affairs of their markets, they were collaborating with their other partners, like Kasita. But again, that was also the time Kasita was also crying over the many vendors who were roaming on the streets. So actually, the president's directive has impressed many of those other key stakeholders.
Where does this leave us as an authority? Because now the public has full trust that you are in charge of the markets. What is our anticipation at the end of the day?
In fact, it is bringing us closer to the people, to the vendors operating in these markets, so that we are able to address their issues. The issues of sanitation, garbage. You know, there are some markets which have been handling their own garbage. Why? Because they had been given that mandate to do so. Markets like Sentibali Kudembe, markets like Chiseka Market. But you see, what is happening today is that let us now get closer to our people operating in these markets, so that these issues, instead of going through a third party, they come directly to KCC or to government.
And maybe before I let you go, I am not hearing you address issues of electricity bills, issues of the high prices of water. You seem to be stuck only on how the market runs. And these are very critical issues. Mr. Bukenya.
Thank you so much. And these are administrative issues that we are supposed to handle actually. So when we are talking about electricity bills or utility bills generally, the president was very clear. If a vendor has consumed his own electricity, then that vendor should be able to pay for that power he has consumed. So that will remain the responsibility of vendors to pay for their own utility. But as government, we are supposed to provide utility for communal areas in these markets. For instance, when it comes to toilet, we are supposed to clean up those toilets. So the water, the electricity that is paid for running and managing those public places is a responsibility of the government.
And
so
maybe
that one we are going to handle it.
Maybe before I let you part ways, if I have issues now and I am renting a particular market, where do I come to? Because now that you are in charge as KCCA, where do I come for help? Where and what must
We
I
have
be able
already
to do?
deployed teams. In fact, the first market where we implemented the directive is Wandege. We already have a team there. But like I have already hinted on it, there is no more subletting, implying whoever has been subletting from anybody, starting from 4th when the Prime Minister issued a new directive, substantiating the one of the President, the landlord issue stopped at that time.
I am not talking about me coming to City Hall.
We have teams on ground. Okay. And what we want to encourage our public is that get to our offices in these markets. In Wandegea, that has already been handled. We have already deployed a technical team. And for the people that have been interested in working in the markets, we have a desk. Our team is receiving applications. But also, we are going to ensure that some of these issues that have been happening in our markets, more especially say in Wandegea market where we have already implemented, those issues must be concluded by this week.
We must be signing out, Mr. Bukenya. Your concluding remark.
First of all, I want to thank Smart24 that we have been able to follow up on so many of these issues, market issues. But I also want to urge our public that the directive that the President has issued has come to redeem them from maybe the hands that were exploiting them. What the President wants, what the government wants, what our executive director here at KCCA wants is to ensure that business thrives in our markets, that the people markets are supposed to help are the real people that are being helped. This business of people paying high charges in terms of rent, where government rate probably is at a certain level, but somebody who is operating in that lockup is charging a subtenant. That is the one that we are saying should stop. Okay. This will benefit our people. They will be able to save some money, but also we are bringing services closer to them, unlike it was before.
Mr. Bukenya, thank you for sparing time and speaking to us. Matters regarding commercial markets in Kampala, I understand that moving forward, Chara Dorothy Chisaka, the Executive Director of Kampala Capital City Authority, and Mr. Bukenya, who is in charge of commercial markets in Kampala, of course, brings us to speed. This is a Coffee Court, and my name is Fred Makubuya.
Many thanks for being part of business today. It is Monday, the 21st of November, 2022, and indeed another brand new week for you to start off from where you stopped last week. Well, do remember, Smart24 is dedicated to giving you all the details regarding business matters. I'm Jorum, Sonko, with Winnie Williams and Nakauchi on sign language from the entire production, newsroom, and the entire team here at Plot 42, Nile Avenue. Have a blessed night. Good evening.